Did any of you have a chance to see the moon this week? I hear yeses, I see some nods, and if you didn't have a chance to see the moon, I'm going to ask you after Shabbat to Google the moon of this week so you get a chance to see the pictures. Because the moon this week is called a super blue moon. It's not actually blue, but it's a moon that appears 30% brighter than any other moon. According to astronomer Ed Bloom, this August moon is a true super blue moon because on its orbital path, it's the closest to Earth. And in August, we get 2 full moons, where we usually get 1. And so when I learned about this rare lunar occurrence, I recalled particular personality traits of the moon that we learn time and time again. In Masechet Chulin in the Talmud, Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi says, there is a major contradiction in a verse in Breshit. In a verse in Breshit, chapter 1:16, it says, God made 2 great lights. You can imagine what they are. The great light is to rule the day, but the lesser light is to rule the night. Do you hear the contradiction? How can the Torah possibly name 2 lights as great, but then say one is more important than the other? But Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi says it's no problem. Listen to the following story that clears up the contradiction. One day, when God created the sun and the moon, at that time they were equally as large and equally as bright, and the moon was confused and perplexed, and so the moon piped up. And the moon went up to God and said, listen, God, we're of equal size and equal brightness. You called both of us great, but do you really think it's possible for 2 kings to serve 1 crown? One of us should be subservient to the other. And listen, God, I think you know which one it should be. So God looked at the moon and said, you're right. Because you brought this important matter to my attention, go ahead, my friend. Make yourself a little smaller. But the personality traits and behaviors that I want to explore for a few minutes this morning, noticeably in the story, the moon was acting with a certain sense of arrogance, with hubris, with ego. But don't we tell others to do exactly what the moon did? To speak up, to shine bright, to be bold. If you have something to say, we tell people, don't hold back. And yet I think God was reminding the moon, and in the teaching, reminding all of us, there is a very fine line, drawn between leading with ego and acting with so much humility to the point of shrinking oneself. It isn't easy to behave by showing respect, but to also behave in which one is able to walk through this world presenting their God-given light, to offer wisdom and talent, only the wisdom and talent that you were meant to share, but simultaneously understanding that the person sitting right next to you has a different ability, just as worthy, just as God-given. It's a balance that our tradition plays with time and time again. There's a Mishnah in Sanhedrin that I believe sums it best. The Mishnah explains that when a human being creates coins, each coin looks exactly the same. But when God creates human beings, we know that each human being looks different from the other. But because every single one of us descends from Adam, we are obligated to say, this world was created for me. Now, I usually teach this Mishnah to our 5th and 6th graders, our preteens. Yes, to remind them that this world was created for you, in a world in which many people will say to them, my light should shine brighter than yours. It's our tradition that says, God created you to teach you exactly what you were meant to teach, to provide the leadership, the guidance, the examples, to provide the words that you were meant to say, and to not let anyone else hold you back. And I teach this Mishnah in order to explain the question, how do we share our light without diminishing someone else's, without making someone else feel small? Perhaps a different lens. Is it possible to live in a world in which we champion the person's light sitting next to us without letting our own go out altogether? The Chofetz Chaim, a late 19th century, early 20th century rabbi who's most known for his teachings about gossip, a healthy speech. He gives an interesting perspective as to how to make room for one's light. You see, he was scheduled to give a talk at a nearby town, and he was sitting on the train, and a stranger came to sit next to him. And the Chofetz Chaim said to the man, "So why the trip? Where are you going?" And the man said, "Listen, I am going to hear the most brilliant speaker, the most brilliant Jewish thinker of all time. I'm about to hear a lecture by the Chofetz Chaim. Have you heard of him?" And the Chofetz Chaim looked at the man because he was so embarrassed by this amount of praise. And the Chofetz Chaim said to the man, "Listen, people exaggerate about that guy. I know him, and he's really not that great." Well, the stranger became enraged, and all of a sudden, he slapped the Chofetz Chaim in the face. And later that evening, when the stranger reached the town and saw the Chofetz Chaim delivering the lecture, he was beside himself. And of course, he waited till after the lecture. He went up to the Chofetz Chaim and said, "Listen, I am terribly sorry. You must forgive me. Please, I had no idea who you were." And the Chofetz Chaim smiled and said, "There's no need for forgiveness. You were defending me. In fact, you taught me one of the greatest lessons. My whole life, I've been teaching people how not to defame others. But now I learned it's also wrong to defame yourself." In other words, we need not shrink ourselves or lessen our light to allow others to shine. But so too, we must learn how to shine in a way that gives others openings to offer their light as well. As I said, I think in the Talmud, the moon was being punished for her arrogance. I don't think she was being punished for her abilities, for her talents. But I don't think the moon could envision a world in which both the moon and the sun were considered equal sources of greatness. But in fact, of all the celestial beings, the people of Israel, all of us, we are most compared to the moon. Why? Because just like the moon's waxing and waning, we too go through various stages and phases, moments throughout time where we feel stronger, where we feel confident, more willing to be seen by the world like a super blue moon. But in other moments, we choose to hide, purposefully making ourselves small. I want you to think about Rosh Chodesh for a moment, the days in which we bless the new moon. You tell me, what does the moon look like during Rosh Chodesh? Very small. Thank you very much. Very small, to the point where sometimes you don't see the moon at all, or you might just see the teeniest of slivers. And I think that's to teach us, because Rosh Chodesh, this is something we bless every month. I think that moment is to teach us that even in the darkest of nights, the moments in which we feel unseen and veiled by the world, God says, your light will return. A light that time and time again will be renewed, a light will grow, a light that will be sustained, but through a practice of balancing self-confidence with humility. You know, a super blue moon is a rare occasion But as I looked at the moon this week, one of the brightest and most beautiful I have ever seen, I thought of Mishle. Nir Adonai Nishmat Adam, the human soul is the lamp of God. Our inner light is a gift from the Holy One. May we learn how to share the brightness of our souls and learn how to nurture the sparks around us. The sharing of a renewed holy light that day and night will no doubt continue to shine upon this wondrous world. Shabbat Shalom.